we begin on this Sunday morning by getting you connected to the Capitol with the latest numbers on who's ahead in the race for the governor. This changes by the day, seemingly. The latest poll has Alan Wilson back in front. And that is where we start off on this fine Sunday morning. We talk about these polls on a weekly basis because they put out about 2 or 3 a week. This is just the most recent one. So we invite in, as usual, Catherine Glenn Foster and Dave Wilson to talk about that. We talked about a poll last week.
We talked about a poll
every
third
week. Place in that one.
Yes.
Now we got this one by Quantum that did this one late, came out Wednesday. Alan's in first place now.
You have to ask a few questions. First of all, who are being interviewed?
Or Quantus, excuse me. Quantus, I'm sorry.
These is GOP primary voters. Mm-hmm. So we kind of know the universe that we're talking about here. You've got Alan Wilson at 23, Evan at 22, Nancy Mace at 20. The margin of error on this is maybe 4%, which means, like we talked about last week and the week before, it's a snapshot in time, and it's like calm waves at the ocean. They're just going to go up and down and up and down. Again, we're at a place where no one is breaking out yet in this particular race. There's nobody who has all of a sudden garnished this phenomenal lead, and they're going to keep carrying that out.
And no matter who's in the lead in any of these polls, whether it's Lieutenant Governor Abbott, whether it's Attorney General Wilson, no matter who it is, they all have one thing in common, and that's that we have this undecided block.
Yeah,
and that's indicating, right, the voters have not made up their minds yet. So they're looking for leadership, not slogans, and they're looking for connection points. They're looking to see who they can really know. And to the extent that there's a lot of difference among these different candidates, because there's a lot of policy similarity there, but difference-wise, you have voters deciding among a really strong institutional steady hand, or kind of a business outsider, one-time business outsider, or a populist firebrand. Yes. And those are the three in the lead that we're seeing over and over and over. So
if we take it from a standpoint of, do you have a level of popularity? It's an interesting, when you start to break down the numbers, the breakdown on numbers on the image ratings. Wilson had a net positive of 18, which means his favorable rating was 38, his unfavorable rating was 20. Pam Evitt, 31 and 27. Here was the thing. Nancy Mace's favorable rating, 38%. Her unfavorable rating, 48%, which means that more people are unfavorable to her than are favorable about her. And that right there begins to say, okay, is the messaging and the messenger and the way that they're combining in Nancy Mace's campaign engaging people or turning people off? The numbers are showing right now it's beginning to turn people off.
And we'll have another one probably on Monday.
And Tuesday. And
give it 24 hours.
Yeah.
And the thing that is consistent with all of them is they are all jockeying for that Trump, well, not all, the Trump endorsement. Ralph Norman wants no part of that.
Right.
But, you know, the three in the lead, that's what they're jockeying for, and it's not coming anytime soon.
Right.
It's just not.
Well, and it's interesting because we're going to talk about it later in the show. We're going to talk about how some groups are trying to undermine some candidates when it comes to Trump's endorsement or Trump's encouragement towards an endorsement somewhere later down the road.
I think also a lot of South Carolina voters right now are looking with suspicion at some of the nationalization that we're seeing of the state race, whether we're talking about claiming a Trump endorsement, seemingly, whether
in an ad?
Exactly, ad watch. Hashtag, or whether we're talking about some of that other activity that we've seen up on Capitol Hill in D.C. There's been a lot of nationalization happening, and I think that the South Carolina voters are really looking to just, again, see who connects with them, who connects maybe especially with the women, the small business owners, the independents, who can begin to draw and coalesce that broad base that can actually result in someone breaking free of this pack.
And talking about connecting, two of these candidates have already connected to the Capitol. By joining us here, we've had both Alan Wilson and Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evitt, who have been on the show. We look forward to having the other candidates come in and have a sit-down conversation and have a real discussion about the issues that matter, because when you're watching, or you're watching online, you're watching on your television here on a Sunday morning, this is an opportunity for people to come on and say, these are the places that I differentiate from. Because right now they are crisscrossing the state. That's part of the job. And I think when you look at the involvement in the way that some people are trying to engage with the media and some people are trying to bypass, there begins to show you how they're looking to garner a greater level of support in the campaign. Nancy Mace is a prime example of that by taking everything she does to social media.
Yeah, and it goes viral.
It does.
The people that follow her, they share that out. So stay tuned, because we'll do another poll, and maybe a poll, and we'll write it down.
We'll write it down.
We'll write it down. We'll put it in the drawer.
We have a drawer back here for that.
Where Dave keeps all his predictions, and then when we take the poll on that. All right, coming up next, frightening piece of information that we're going to look at here: Arctic frost. GOP lawmakers being targeted by the FBI. We're going to take a look at that when we come back.
Apparently, in September of 2023, Jack Smith, part of his team, asked phone companies to provide records of who I called as a sitting senator, chairman of the Judiciary Committee in January 2021, trying to figure out whether or not I should certify the election. The FBI needs to be congratulated for finding this.
Lindsey Graham releasing that video just a few days ago after learning that information. And of course, it was talked about in Washington with some hearings this past week. 9 GOP lawmakers targeted in something called Arctic frost. There they are. 8 senators, 1 House member on this list, all targeted by the Biden era FBI for who they were talking to, what they were talking about, and why. This is startling this week. It really is. And there's the documents right there to back it up. Jack Smith, the special counsel in charge of that, who is no longer there. All linked to that January 6th insurrection as well.
Yes, critics are calling this worse than Watergate.
Yeah.
It's alleging that the administrative branch turned its investigatory powers against the legislative branch. Really shocking stuff here, very appalling. And we have to remember, of course, that metadata does not include content. We're talking about the who called whom and when and that kind of information. But it still brings up very serious questions about privacy rights, not to mention, in this case, the separation of powers. So we've already started to see some of the pushback, the critics, the oversight hearings. We are going to see a lot more from this, whether it's from oversight hearings and other kinds of exposés.
When you look at people's private data being taken a look at, you're in that era again of what's being done by the administrative branch on the other branches. And this is the place where people get concerned about, we have this deep state. Is the deep state real? This is where some people who are conspiracy theorists will look at this and go, our government's totally being turned against us right now. But when you find out that 8 members of the Senate and a member of the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. are getting their phone records checked, where's the check and balance on that? Who was the court that approved that? Who was the judge that went through and said, yes, you have a right to go through these particular records? Because we expect our government to be there to protect us, not to be investigating on us without cause. And that is a huge concern. And the fact that it's Senator Lindsey Graham, who was on the Judiciary Committee, who played a vital role in what was going to be done on a vote count in January of 2021, this is a big concern that people should be at least aware of. Now, for so many of you, you're going to be seeing here go, Arctic frost is what we expect to have happen sometime in January. And it did happen in January 4 years ago. And now we're at this place where we're going to begin to wonder, where else is this being done? And that is a level of a degradation of a trust in the American government, the American system, that some people are really going to call into question.
And that's exactly why the founders put checks and balances into place. Because when you have this uncontrolled power, it starts to creep. So the Biden era FBI had this creeping power. So we're seeing this back and forth, really, where both sides, both parties are claiming overreach of one branch into another. But this is just a clear demonstration of overreach into the records of sitting members of Congress.
As they go through this, how do you hold people accountable at this point? The folks that were involved, they're not there anymore.
Well, let's go back to an issue where we are seeing that.
Yeah.
You have former FBI Director James Comey.
That's true. That's true.
The president had called upon a U.S. attorney, replaced that U.S. attorney because that U.S. attorney, within a 5-year window of where they could actually make the charges. There's what's that? It's the
statute of limitations.
Yeah, statute of limitations. The statute of limitations was coming to an end. The prosecutor, the U.S. attorney, was not willing to do anything at the moment, would not make a decision. That's where the president comes in and goes, okay, you're out. I'm going to put somebody else in who is at least going to say, did James Comey do something illegal? Did he lie to Congress? Did he do something wrong? Put it before a grand jury and let the grand jury decide. And that case, while it does seem small, is a place where at least there is some level of accountability. Did you tell the truth to Congress or did you not? Somebody has to answer the question. Did you purposely tap these phones? Did you purposely go through these records? Did you purposely do this action that is against the law? Or if you did do it, what was your justification and what was your approval to be able to do so? And how do we protect the American people from it happening to them?
That's exactly right, because we're looking at the normalization of surveillance.
Yep.
This is something that the Supreme Court has time and time again stepped in on, and when it comes to ordinary people, we've even had cases in the Supreme Court where, can a police officer drive slowly by a house looking for, for the signature hot spots that kind of show that maybe there's drug activity, different things like that. And so there are limits to surveillance. And so this is, it's a political crisis, but it's also a constitutional one. So as we're looking at justice here, we have to address justice for what's already happened and figure out how to satisfy that, but also look at how we're going to handle this going forward, how we put checks and balances, new ones, stronger ones into place to make sure that this can't happen, that we can't be subpoenaing the phone records of these sitting members of Congress and try to suss out who they called when they're literally, as Senator Graham said, they're calling their counsel and saying, help me figure this out.
Well, and keep in mind, when you use your cell phone, that information is tracked. Every time you move with your cell phone, your location is also tracked. That data is stored and is retrievable by the major cell phone carriers. The government can access that with probable cause. Is there a reason why this is done? Do they have a subpoena to be able to go in and get that information? You're the lawyer on this one, so if I step beyond my bounds, I simply sit by one on TV. But if that's going to happen, there needs to be a level of, again, a check and balance to this to make sure that, yes, there is a reason for doing that. There is just cause for wanting to take a review of these.
That's right. And so, our data, our metadata is available to so many different companies and entities. It's not just the cell phone carrier. It's Apple itself. It's a lot of these apps that we're using that are tracking our location. And you can even pull up your phone and there'll be a little arrow looking thing there that says, okay, something has been using your location recently.
Yeah, right.
Really, it should always be there because they're always tracking. Right. But the question again is how that surveillance data is used, because it's there, but we've also seen companies like Apple go to court and actually say, no, you can't subpoena our records. We're not going to hand this over without, a very significant reason why. And here again,
and keep in mind, it was the same type of phone data that was used to see who was and was not at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
And we'll end that one there. But and you talked about crisis. When we come back, there could be a potential crisis with some of our dams in this state. 10 years after the catastrophic floods of 2015, still a report out there that indicates maybe some of them still aren't up to par. We're going to talk about that when we come back. And the South Carolina's ports system, speaking of not being up to par.
A lot of water.
Yes.
There we go.
That's when we come back. All right, welcome back to Connect to the Capitol. 10 years after the 2015 flood, you remember these horrifying images. 10 years ago this month. A report this week that all those dams that were breached 10 years ago because of shoddy maintenance, maybe just not coordination in releasing some of those waters as well. Some of them still not up to par when it comes to being properly inspected is what we're finding. Now, fortunately, we haven't had another incident like this, and I hope we never do ever again. One of the worst things I've ever lived through.
Yeah.
Dozens of people killed all around the state. Majority of them here in the Midlands. Most of that video you just saw there, that was in the Forest Acres area.
Exactly.
This is an important thing to keep in mind when we realize that 1 out of 6 dams in South Carolina is getting a failing grade.
Yeah.
There are basically 5 to 6 levels, depending upon which report you look at, of grading that's done. Excellent, good, poor, unsatisfactory, high hazard, significant hazard. When you look at the fact that 1/2 of the dams in South Carolina are considered to be poor or unsatisfactory, then you've got a significant issue going on. Keep in mind, here in the Midlands of South Carolina, you got 2 counties. One county's dams broke top to bottom. So the upper dams broke, which broke the lower dams, which broke the next ones down. In the other county across the river, they broke in the opposite direction. There was less damage that was done over there.
Yeah.
But when you think about that, anything greater or less than, I guess you want to call it by a grading scale, anything unsatisfactory or less, high hazard, significant hazard, is almost guaranteed to have a loss of life if that dam breaks.
Yeah.
And we saw the damage from broken dams for years after that. You go over into Irmo, in the riverways that were over there, you had neighborhoods that continued to be flooding for years afterwards because the riverways were still so clogged with everything that was in everybody's garage. Think about it, when your garage flooded in 2015 and stuff swept away, it ended up making its way to a waterway. And we had the DNR director, Tom Mulligan, out doing a project one time and actually found rifles, tires, children's toys, and those sorts of things ended up clogging up the river systems, which created numerous issues in neighborhoods. If these things don't get dealt with, we can expect to see a greater level of insurance increases and other issues, not to mention the significant threat to life like we saw 10 years ago.
That's right. It has this cascading effect that does last for years, not to mention the just untold loss of life, loss of just
Property,
everything.
everything.
And then as Tom Mulligan found, he diagnosed the problem. He went out there and said, oh, well, here's your problem right here. There's all this stuff clogging up the rivers. But we have years of deferred maintenance, years of improper inspections. We're spending millions on politics, but pennies on prevention. And we aren't taking care of these problems right before our eyes, where these dams are just tragedies waiting to happen.
Yeah.
This is part of, when we talk about infrastructure, this is part of infrastructure, roads, bridges, dams, but also, Brian, another major part of our infrastructure are our ports.
The port system. We got a new director, CEO, Michael Malice, appointed SC Ports director this past week. They were without one for about a month. The numbers right now aren't good when it comes to our port system. We had the dredging of the harbor. The belief was we're going to have more container ships coming in there, more money, more money, more money. It's not panning out so far.
There's 2 factors that are playing into that. One, you have a lot of expenses that have gone into the expansion of the port. The port has gone through a major expansion period, but they've also had several items that have gone way over budget. We were talking to a member of the legislature just this week who said there was an extra $30 million that had to be set aside for what's considered an apron. That's where you trade out the containers from from one tractor trailer to another, or from the ship to a tractor trailer, to be able to then go out and crisscross the state and go all across the U.S. and especially here in the Southeast from the port of Charleston. The second problem, though, is Savannah. The port of Savannah, and this is an interesting fact, to just give you a quick thing. When Brian was talking a moment ago about the fact that we dredged the port of Charleston, we made it possible deep enough so that the big ships could go back and forth in the harbor. That was supposed to make South Carolina more competitive when it came to shipping. Savannah, just the opposite. They're a one-way road in and out.
Yeah.
The Savannah River is only so wide.
That's right, and yet we have a 7% year-on-year decrease, and then every ship that actually ends up going to Savannah is a paycheck lost in Charleston, and that's impacting real South Carolina families.
So there's a lot more that's going to go into the discussion about what's happening with the harbor, because according to the conversation we heard earlier this week, there's a lot more that's going to be uncovered as the numbers come out.
All right. Well, when we come back, we promised some dissension in the ranks in the GOP in that first segment. That's when we come back and we close things out on Connect to the Capitol. All right, about to wrap things up here on Connect to the Capitol. Pamela Evett drawing the ire of the Greenville County GOP. They say that they are planning to censure her at their next meeting, which is set for tomorrow, Monday, saying that she's just not a Trump America candidate. They're mad at her.
They are. They're expecting an America First candidate, and they are speaking out. This really illustrates the growing tension, the divide, the tightrope that someone has to walk between the state level leadership and the local party activists, especially in these more ideologically driven precincts. And so it's a difficult line to walk, but when it comes to your hometown party potentially censuring you, that's not just a slap on the wrist. That is a statement. You know, we are watching you and we don't like what we see.
Yeah.
And this is the split that you're seeing in the deep red state of South Carolina, where the Republican Party really has two different factions. You have what's the typical traditional Republican and the MAGA group. And sometimes there's some level of crossover that exists between those two. But Jeff Davis, the chairman of the Greenville County Republican Party, put out a statement about why he wants to be able to censure Pamela Evett. Let's pull that up on the screen real quick, Marcus, and we can let you read that one. He said, "We want it to be a message to Donald Trump that she's not the person to endorse if she's not going to push the America First agenda." They are absolutely demanding and have been doing so throughout the efforts of the GOP during reorganization and everything else to wrestle control of the Republican Party to be able to kind of match it into that MAGA image. And there has still been a lot of people within the Republican Party who've said, we're not really for that.
So Monday it is.
Yes.
I believe it's the second reading of that censure.
The other part about this is it's like a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Do you take it? Do you not?
It's a public reprimand.
Right.
I know Dave wanted me to do this now. I want to champion.
We demand this.
It is Sunday in South Carolina, which means that as we wrap up today, there is one important thing that happened. The South Carolina State Fair has begun in Columbia. Among the first events to take place, the boiled peanut eating contest with our very own.
Look at me go,
Brian McConkey. Look, there's Kelly Nash right beside me. Jonathan Rush was along, and you were in some massive competition.
The man can eat some peanuts.
But this win is not just your first win, man. This is your second. Wait,
defending champ.
Marcus, pull this thing up. Look at this, folks.
Look at that.
Look at that. But wait.
And that's last year.
But wait.
Yeah.
There's
more. This is like Brian at the state fair.
Just wait till next year.
Oh my word! Here,
Yeah, right here.
We'll
right
slide
here.
them across because this is what you get to enjoy on Sundays in South Carolina.
A decade from now, you won't see us.
We'll be hiding behind them all.
What a claim to fame.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it this week. We hope you have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.